Hey everyone, it's Sierra from See You Next Tuesday, and today I'm in Kitchener with a very special guest, Ashlyn, who is the MPP for Kitchener Central. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So something I want to start off with, which I think is personally affecting, I know it's affected myself, and I think it's affected a lot of people, specifically the Gen Z population, but the world and specifically Canada is facing a massive loneliness epidemic, and I think that's sweeping across the nation. And I think it's highlighting a crucial need for community. And I think that's one of the massive pillars of what you do and the work that you do. So what kind of grassroots initiatives could help, I guess, address this issue, and how are you combating that?
So I was a social worker for 11 years, so I see very much how the mental health impact of loneliness on young people in our society. I think we got really hooked to our phones, right? And so I think it's important that we try to find a way to break past. I think online is great for kind of meeting new people, making connections, and then how do we move that into the physical space? So, I mean, in my work as a politician, I try to make sure I'm reaching out to folks I haven't talked to before. We go door to door to listen to the issues that people are facing, try to invite them in and include them in conversation so that we are not as siloed, like I think online spaces and the algorithm really silos people to only talking to people who are like them and more than before. And so I think through community creating, spreading and following community organizers, organizing instead of agonizing, we can kind of blow apart some of these divides. And I think that can be done through online and marrying that with in-person kind of approaches.
Yeah. Do you have any examples, I guess, of sort of any grassroots initiatives that you've done that you can share with us that have kind of helped to combat that issue?
I think, I am part of the Green Party and we are a people-powered movement. So we don't rely on deep-pocketed donors. I think this government tripled the amount that people could donate to a political party, but most of our donations were under $50, and so we rely on volunteers and we try to create a space where everyone feels like they're part of it, where they're included, they see themselves, they're recognized and welcomed. So, when I go door to door, I can tell when there's, whether it's a senior or a newcomer or somebody who is really yearning to be part of something. And I try to create a connection where they're invited in, they can see themselves and their talent and how they can put that to use. I feel like people are really unmotivated and disaffected by politics, disappointed. There's a lack of trust, low voter turnout and stuff like that. And I think the way we can combat that is bringing people in, helping them feel part of something. And so just as an example, I was door knocking. I met with this young lady. She's from Ghana. She'd only been in Canada for less than a year. And just come meet people. This is, a lot of her circles are Ghanaian circles and African circles. And I think, just like I need to go and be part of those communities and bridge that gap, I also want her to come and join this political movement and be part of that community, meet people outside of her bubble.
That actually goes right into my other point, which is about the decline of third spaces. I think we're seeing that across a ton of different cities and sort of the privatization of it. A lot of people, can't really afford to go into a coffee shop every single day and spend $8 on a latte. So what do you think that we can do to address that need for accessible third spaces where people can make community and meet new people?
I think that's where government really needs to step up. I think sometimes they fund things and make things available. I know we had a winter music series that was funded by the government and you had to book your ticket, but it was free. It was at the museum and I got to try and see some new artists and be out in community in the winter months when we need it most. So I would like to see government fund arts and recreation and transit to kind of make it possible, get rid of those barriers, especially for low middle income people. But it needs to be funded. And I think there is a decline in volunteerism. But, how do we inspire people to kind of participate in things that don't necessarily have a price tag?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into with social media and the individualism that kind of emerges because it's a very solitary activity. And this is a little bit more outside of the realm of community building. But I think we're in a time of social media where there's a lot of distortion of facts or just kind of misinformation. And there's discourse obviously around climate change, or the lack of climate change that certain parties seem to promote. What do you have to say to that, especially being a part of the Green Party? Like, what's your take on how social media is playing into that?
You know, as a school social worker, I saw a really negative impact. I think I see a lot more of the instances where things didn't go well because of smartphones, to be honest. I think we saw a huge spike in suicidality in 2012 when the first smartphones came about. And we have done very little to wrangle in and create some guardrails for this medium. Like, it has so much potential, but without these protections against, sparking fear, we know fear gets more clicks, and the algorithm, if you divide people and keep that, people pay attention longer. And I see in Australia where they're actually looking to ban social media for those under 16. And I see in Toronto how school boards are taking social media giants to court. And, to me, it shouldn't have to land on the backs of individuals and courts to look at the health impacts of social media. We should be creating these protections, because as long as people can profit off it at an alarming rate, they're not incentivized to look at the protections we should put in place to stop, the collection of likes. There are tools. It's not about, not necessarily even about banning at things, but it's almost like, McDonald's, how they advertise to small children. If we create certain incentives like toys and gimmicks and likes and using different algorithmic tools to keep people and hijacking their attention, I think is the term used, right? It means that they're not with their families. They're not in their community. They're not going outside. They're not being healthy humans. So, I always try to encourage kids to kind of be mindful of that and create healthy habits, but we need to do more to police these massive giants who are profiteering off of the attention of a generation. Yeah,
100%. I think social media can be such an amazing tool to mobilize and help create community and basically get them off the phones and in real life, right? I think right now there's just not enough incentive to do that. You will kind of want to keep them on their phones because that's how you're making money. That's how you're getting advertisers.
100%.
But speaking of, I guess, getting out into the community and doing in-person events, I think that community building and the arts specifically is such a pillar to that. And I know you're very involved in the community here. And can you just speak on that a little bit and the importance of, the music scene and the local art scene and how that really builds community and helps people kind of get out of that loneliness that they're feeling?
Yeah, I think we're creative humans, right? Like, I think arts is so much more than just being creative. It's like, it's in people's soul. It's a calling. It's a mental health outlet, like we can process emotion, like heavy things. I know we had one about, I was in the Registry Theater, watching research come to life in a theater format about, Black people who live in rural spaces. And it was amazing for the audience to see that story, because a lot of people either didn't know about it and learned or connected and say, oh, that was my experience. So it's very validating. So having spaces like the Registry Theater that people can access and put something forward and be empowered goes a long way. I think, at Kitchener, I'm grateful to be part of this community where we have a rich diversity of artists and audiences. And so I just want to see us be able to encourage more of that. I think our arts going community, I want to see that grow and invite more people in. We do have a lot of newcomers, and how do we create an invitation or an opportunity for more and more people to come forward? A lot of seniors stopped attending things maybe, but how do we reconnect with folks who maybe have other mobility challenges or did disconnect? How do we make it more accessible? So I think we have to look at different folks who maybe aren't coming and see how we can bridge that barrier, but also celebrate how we are. I think Registry and many others are continuing to grow the number of voices that we are able to showcase here.
That's amazing. And what are some ways that people can participate in community building events in Kitchener, the city of Kitchener specifically?
I think I love social media for that reason, right? Like, I get to see what's going on that way. We've been able to pedestrianize one of our streets, and it's become a turnkey for festivals and markets. So that's been really exciting. I think our municipality is really invested in making this a destination for arts and culture. I think the province needs to step up. We've had frozen funding for the Ontario Arts Council for, I think 2012, or I'm going to say, like, it's been a really long time since it's frozen. I think sometimes those dollars tend to go to Toronto.
Yeah.
And so we need to advocate for equity across the province for other communities that want to promote their arts and culture. So yeah, I just think there's lots of ways to get connected and get involved, but I think we need all hands on deck to make sure we're getting the message out and people feel invited.
Yeah. And one of the things I actually noticed is we drove in from Toronto, but I've only been to Kitchener like once or twice when I was younger. But you guys have incredible public transit. It seems like the light rail and your amount of buses and everything. Can you kind of speak on the importance of public transit and why that is such a important part of any city and city building in general?
Yeah, I was just chatting with a gentleman from Get on the Bus, and he was telling me about Kingston and how they have free transit for young people. And so they started blanket across grade 9. They train young people before they go into high school, how to get your route, how to use transit. And what it leads to is young people feeling more independent, more empowered. So, I mean, imagine that cities across Ontario for young people and seniors and, you know, for field trips, for example, a lot of school boards don't do field trips anymore because they don't have enough money to pay for transit. So when we open up some of these barriers for folks, we can see young people feel empowered to move around and go where they want to go. And I think there's a lot of these, you know, let's say my kid wants to come here and I'm busy and they can't come, but like, if they could get on a bike and ride in a bike lane, or they could ride transit downtown, like they could go wherever they want to and feel really empowered by that. And that's, I think, would combat mental health challenges that we see in communities.
Yeah, I always feel great at the end of the night when I can like take the transit home because I'm like looking out, kind of having a music video moment with like my sad music. But I'm like, I still feel connected because there's people around me versus like when I drive home from an event, I'm like in despair, you know, sorrowful, if you will. But a lot of our audience is more Gen Z and on the younger side. So I guess to kind of end it off, what are some things that you can tell them on how to get involved in their community and what they should sort of be prioritizing and how they can build community wherever, whether they're in a small town or in a place like Toronto or Kitchener?
I'd say get involved, whatever the issue is for you. You know, like everybody has a different spark. As I was working with kids who were, we called it disengaged over COVID. And so my job was try to find a way to re-engage them. I mean, hopefully in education and school, but like to me, it's all about being part of life. There's a book that I studied as a social worker, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, right? Like, how do we see what matters to you, the values that you have, who you want to be as a human, and how do you use your time that way? And, you know, yes, we're going to get stuck in traps and emotions and stuff like that, but looking forward and instead of saying, don't think that way, don't feel that way, looking forward to the opportunity you have to live your values. And I mean, for me, politics is so important. We see south of the border, in our own communities in Ontario and Canada, you know, a very divisive kind of politics and a very, you know, kind of toxic, you know, was sometimes filled with hate, a lot of us and them. And like, you really see the influence of folks who have a lot of money and a lot of power. And I think young people, I think are really a beacon of hope. And I mean, you know, I want to see everybody kind of get up and see how much politics plays in our life. So then taking that issue that matters to you, whether it's climate or arts, and trying to push for that to be a priority for our governments, because they're always, I see them picking their wealthy insiders, right? And giving a free ride to and spending our tax dollars and billions of dollars on these soul crushing commutes or oil and gas giants or big corporate demands. And I don't think that serves any of us well. So get involved and acknowledge and try to make those things part of the political conversation.
Yeah, amazing. I can completely agree with that. But thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. And I think we're going to kind of look around the theater and chat some more. But yeah, thank you so much.